1 Peter 3:8 says,
Finally, all of you,
be like-minded,
be sympathetic,
love one another,
be compassionate and humble.
This letter to non-Jewish Christians was written during a time in the early church
when Christians were being divided over their Jewish and non-Jewish backgrounds.
But they were being urged to seek unity instead of division.
Throughout history, people in our world have chosen division over love.
Something we will inevitably see over the next few months.
But as Christians, let's learn to work together for compassion,
for unity, for care,
and for humility.
Let's learn to stay together.
Our scripture reading this week comes from 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 12, and I will be reading from the New Revised Standard Version. Finally, all of you have unity of spirit, sympathy, love for one another, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not repay evil for evil or abuse for abuse, but on the contrary, repay with a blessing. It is for this that you were called, that you might inherit a blessing. For those who desire life and desire to see good days, let them keep their tongues from evil and their lips from speaking deceit. Let them turn away from evil and do good. Let them seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
About 10 years ago, my family was on our way to see a game at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. We were excited to get over to the stadium early to get some lunch and to sit in there and just take in all the sights and sounds. So we got on the subway and we're heading over, and we've been on the subway in New York plenty of times before, but game day in the Bronx can be a little bit crazier than your average subway ride. There's a lot of people packed in there, and we were a bit worried about my youngest sister, Annie. Right now, Annie's about to be a junior in college, but at the time, she was just around 11 years old, maybe. She didn't have a cell phone yet, and of course, her cell phone wouldn't have worked down at the bottom of a subway station anyway. So we were really set on keeping Annie with us and making sure she did not get lost. So our plan was to have her get on the subway first so that she wouldn't be standing in the back and get left behind or wander off or just do something crazy. So of course, when the subway got there, we said, go on Annie, get in there first, and I was right behind her, so I'm sure it's my fault. But it seemed like the second Annie took a step onto the subway train, those doors just immediately closed right behind her back. And if you've been on a subway before, as you're getting on, usually the doors close and then they open and they close and they open, and it does it 2 or 3 times because there's people down the way that are blocking the doors. But of course, this one time, the one time I can ever remember it doing it, the doors just closed that one time and they stayed closed. And so we could see the panic on Annie's face, and I'm sure she could see the panic on our face. But we tried to quickly tell her to get off at the next stop, and we'd come for her as quickly as we could. And we looked at other people on the subway, and they seemed to understand what we were saying. They were going to help her out. So as soon as the next subway came, we rushed on. We got to the next stop, and there we saw her talking to a policeman. So we were quite proud of the way Annie had reacted in what was kind of a crazy situation where we all were panicking just a bit. But I think what we all learned during that adventure is that sometimes staying together is a little bit more difficult than we originally anticipate. I think we can all find this to be true in our friend groups, in our families, in our churches and Christian communities, and across the world. Not necessarily in a literal sense, and then in that it's difficult to stay together physically. Of course, it is difficult to stay together physically in this time of social isolation. But more so in a sense that it's difficult for us to be on the same page and to get along and to stay together in that sense. And yet, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 tells us this: finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. When it says all of you, it's referring to all followers of Christ are to behave in this way. And some interpret what follows, that be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble, as commands or imperatives, saying that if you're a follower of Christ, then you must do these things. Others think it's more of a description, saying that Christians are those who are like-minded, who are sympathetic, who love one another, are compassionate, and are humble. However we interpret it, we know that as Christians, we are called to be like-minded and to do all of these things. And I think when we think about staying together, it's that like-mindedness that is important, but it's also a challenging concept for us. Does it mean that we're supposed to all think the same way and do the same things and we're never allowed to disagree? I don't think that's exactly what it's talking about. Another translation says that we are called to live in harmony, and I think that gives us a little bit clearer picture, that we're called to accept the differences of opinions that we have. We're called to speak with kindness, to try to create peace and not stir up drama within the groups that we're a part of. And living in harmony sounds like something that would require us to be passive, to just watch the world pass us by and not make an impact. But really it calls us to take action. And as we'll see over these next few weeks, those actions are to be sympathetic, to love others, to be compassionate, and to humble ourselves. It also requires us to consider our roles in our families, in our friend groups, our churches, our communities, and to ask ourselves what we are doing to create unity and to create harmony and to help those around us to stay together, even in the most difficult of circumstances.
And kingdoms will bow down, and every chain will break as broken hearts declare his praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. 'Cause our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, who can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles, and every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chains, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him.
We're talking this week about being like-minded, and that can be difficult to do in a world where there's so many different things that we debate. Who's our favorite contestant on The Bachelor? Who's the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Is a hot dog a sandwich? There's so many things that we debate, and the problem with these debates a lot of times is that we focus a lot more on arguing our side of the debate than we do on listening to what the other person has to say. And there's a line from a prayer by St. Francis that's been helpful for me as I think about this. In this prayer, he says, "O Lord, grant that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand." And so this can be helpful whether we're debating something silly like sports or something more serious. And so here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to have a conversation with someone you know you disagree with. But I don't want you to argue with this person. Instead of arguing, I want you as much as possible to focus on asking just questions. Ask them questions about what they believe and what they think. And I don't want you to just try to trip them up, but I want you to listen to their responses. Listen to what they believe. And this will have two positive effects. First of all, you may hear something that you haven't heard before and learn something that you didn't know before. Second, the person may be surprised by the fact that you're asking them questions about what they believe, and they may turn around and ask you questions about what you believe. And in the end, you'll both end up understanding each other better. And hopefully you'll know more by doing this. Try it this week and see how it goes.